Welcome. My name is Alex, and this is Watch Repair Tutorials. I retired from watchmaking after 35 years, and today I love sharing what I know about this incredible craft. This is lesson one in a new series for amateur watchmakers just getting started in the hobby. Today's lesson is all about setting realistic expectations. All right, so you'll want to jump into this rabbit hole we call watchmaking. Maybe you have watched a bunch of videos and you're all excited about becoming a watchmaker. Or maybe you have inherited your uncle's beat up watch collection and you want to fix them up. Whatever the case is, here you are. I get a lot of questions from people, both old and young, about the best way to get started in watchmaking and what it takes to be an amateur watchmaker today. So I thought it would be appropriate to make a video talking about some of the advice that I give people. This is mainly directed towards the beginners in the hobby, but there may be something of interest here for those of you who are more experienced as well. For someone just starting out, the idea of taking a watch apart can certainly be a daunting challenge. In our digital world, there's no shortage of opinions on how to do things, and there's also no shortage of people telling you what you should and should not do. When you're new and you don't know anything, any advice could sound right. Watchmaking is a very broad subject with many nooks and crannies to explore. There is all different kinds of flavors. It could be as complicated as making new watch movements from raw brass and steel to modifying parts of an existing watch to your own liking. Some want to restore vintage watches to build a collection, and others want to buy old watches, fix them up, and flip them for a profit. Still others dream of creating their own brand and want to learn how to source and assemble the parts. Whatever it is that attracts you to watchmaking, whatever path you choose, there is not a right or wrong. No matter what path you choose, there is going to be a steep learning curve, and you're going to need to pay your dues, either in time spent learning or by learning through making mistakes. Very few people get it right away. No matter what area you want to pursue, you're going to need to be able to know how a watch movement looks and functions when everything is correct before you are able to fix anything that's broken. Let me say that another way. You have to know what's right before you can fix what's wrong. One of the most difficult things you can face is learning how to do watch repair by yourself. Students in watchmaking school, they have an instructor watching over them for 2 years to critique everything they do. They are constantly getting feedback on what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and they have unlimited resources and tools available to them. So, if it's possible, find a watchmaker near you and learn from their experience. It helps to have a mentor to guide you through the beginning stages of your watchmaking journey. I was extremely lucky when I started out over 40 years ago. I did have these mentors, and it helped me immensely understanding some of the more complex subjects like the balance and the escapement. Back when I started, we didn't have YouTube or forums like we have now. All my learning came from experienced watchmakers, unlike what you face on the internet today. For the most part, you don't know who is giving you advice. So it helps to have another watchmaker around that you trust to help answer the questions that will come up as you're learning. Many people think that they're just going to be able to buy a non running watch and throw some parts in and it's going to be fixed. They don't realize that new parts may not be available. So they end up buying donor movement after donor movement, looking for good parts. And before they know it, they've bought three movements just to fix one. My advice is to start with a new movement like the ST36, which is a clone of the ETA 6497. It's a simple manual wind movement that actually performs pretty well. I teach people to test the movement before you service it, and then you take it apart, you clean the parts, you put it back together, and lubricate it. You do this until you can get at least the same performance or better than before you took it apart. In other words, you need to be able to do that first before you try servicing a movement that has other issues. You need to make sure that the problems a watch movement has are not being caused by something you are doing wrong. One thing I hear over and over is, I just serviced the movement and it won't run, or it has really low amplitude, or the rate is way off. What do I do? This is also certainly not the cheapest hobby to get into. Almost all the tools are specialized to watch repair and are designed to work on very small and precise parts. Although the initial tools needed to get started are not expensive, you can expect to buy a new tool for almost every task you have to do. Let's take, for example, changing watch crystals. They require one tool for vintage wristwatches that have plastic crystals, and another tool for the same plastic crystals in a pocket watch. You're going to need a crystal press with one set of dies for flat glass or sapphire crystals and another set of dies for dome crystals. You will constantly be adding to your tool collection the further down the rabbit hole you go. Luckily, some tools don't require a high degree of precision, and they can be purchased fairly expensively. But sometimes, say, if you want to work on an old pocket watch, those repairs require vintage tools to be able to repair them. Watchmaking is not a craft where you can take shortcuts and get good results. For example, lubricants used in watchmaking are expensive. So, if you think that you can reinvent the wheel and use sewing machine oil for lubrication, your results are going to be very poor. Think of lubricants like a tool. There's plenty of other places you can save money. Learn from other knowledgeable people. You don't have to figure everything out at once. Learn from what others have already discovered before you. Start with quality tools. Now, in the beginning, your tools don't have to be the most expensive, but they do need to have some quality about them. You should never compromise on quality, as it will always come back to bite you in the butt. With this particular hobby, you can spend as little or as much as you desire. You can have a few or as many tools and watches as you want. There is no rule that says you have to have a certain amount of tools. But when you work on the older watches, they're going to require more tools. Surround yourself with knowledgeable people and follow good information. You will, in fact, become a capable watchmaker. My personal opinion is that social media and people's lack of attention and focus is the biggest thing holding most people back from being successful in watchmaking. You will not learn watchmaking on your first movement. You need to take baby steps and work your way up. Sometimes we allow other people who fancy themselves as experts to persuade us to do things that are inferior, and there should be nothing inferior about the work we do. Start with quality, stay with quality. Do not compromise on quality in this aspect of your learning process. Be willing to make mistakes and be willing to learn from them. Like anything else in life, watchmaking includes plenty of mistakes, and I personally have made many, but they were all valuable lessons. But they're only valuable as teaching instruments if we have a teachable attitude and if we're eager to improve our skills and knowledge. I've learned so much from the many mistakes that I've made since I started watchmaking many years ago. And as a result, the work I do now is far more pleasurable and meaningful to me. Also, be aware that your interest in horology will develop and change over time. Try not to work on every type of watch all at once. Grow slow and grow steady. Keep learning new techniques and practice these techniques on your practice movements, not on family heirlooms. If you can't figure out a problem, do not be quick to ruin it. Save it. Put it in a drawer for later. It's best to have a dedicated place to work if you can. It doesn't have to be in its own room. It may be in a corner somewhere. Just depends on what your options are. But at least have some place where you can protect your work in a moderate way. It is highly important, in my opinion, for you to always work on movements where you can enjoy the work. Buying a non running railroad pocket watch is pointless without owning a staking set and a Sights jewel press with all the attachments. All these things work together to create an enjoyment in watchmaking. And finally, and this is extremely important, take your time. Slow down. Do not rush the learning process. Do not rush the experience. If you fail in this basic but all important point, watchmaking will always be frustrating. If you fail to slow down, watchmaking will never make sense to you. The first thing I learned when I walked in my first day of watchmaking school over 40 years ago, and what I want you to learn today. In watchmaking, everything matters. So, if you're an experienced watchmaker and you've watched this, I would be interested to hear about your experiences when you were first starting and what type of struggles you faced. Place a comment down below, and I'm sure our viewers would love to read them. And because there is so much more to learn, I'll see you in the next video.